Welcome to the Universal Community Project Crucible, where we measure ideas posted on Egora against sets of principles authored and selected by members of Citizen Assembly. In tonight's forum, Sherwin Shao shall present Never Too Big to Fail, and receive feedback from Staci Gustafson according to the 34 holistic principles. The objective is to create initiatives forged and balanced in democracy. Our meeting format goes like this. First, the featured presenter reads an idea or essay that they have chosen in advance from the Egora website. Next, the co-presenter rates that idea against a set of principles chosen by them in advance. In this case, in the interest of time, Staci will rate Sherwin's essay based against only the first 10 of the 34 holistic principles. To aid the featured presenter in improving their idea after the co-presenter gives their comments, each principle is then highlighted in turn within the chat, where all forum participants are asked to write their own commentary and suggestions relative to those principles in the order given. There will be a 1 minute for this, during which time one of the participants with their hand up will be randomly selected to speak their comment out loud. The featured presenter will then have 2 minutes to respond to all comments, after which the co-presenter will bring up the next principle. Upon completing this process for all principles, the featured presenter receives the chat file for review. The featured presenter and host can then choose also accept oral comments from any participant at the end of the program. Throughout the forum, please raise your hand in the chat at the appropriate time or on the screen if you don't have the chat Zoom feature. And keep your comments relevant to the principal idea being addressed. Use the provided principles as your guideline. Please save your commentary or questions about the principles themselves until after the meeting or during a specifically called meeting to discuss the 34 holistic principles. Let's start with a quick round of introductions for our panel and any new guests. Okay, I guess we could skip that part, I think. All right, so let's see here. Thank you very much, panel. Now let's move on to today's ideas, shall we? And I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. So, all right. Okay. Today, Sherwin will be reading Egora idea number 815, which you can see here on the left side of my screen.
Got the wrong one.
No.
Oh, wrong one. Sorry.
Here
you go.
There.
I'll be reading idea number 815, which you can see here on my screen. And which is called Never Too Big to Fail, which has been written up to share with others in Egora, the worldwide stock market of ideas at egora-ilp.org. Egora is an online platform where people from around the world can turn their ideas into policy to build a better world. I will start screen sharing this idea from Egora and Sherwin. You are welcome to proceed with the reading. Now, okay. Sherwin, you may read your idea.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Right. I believe that big banks and big businesses, the idea that they're never too big to fail. It's not fair that they get bailed out. Instead, I believe that people and families should be considered too precious to fail. I believe it's J.P. Getty who wrote, if you owe the bank $100, it's your problem. If you owe the bank $100 million, it's the bank's problem. That's because there's a different set of rules for the rich and the poor. I propose the nationalization of mature services like lottery, insurance, banking, credit rating, consumer reports, and financial audits. Because we've been privatizing way too much. We've been privatizing schools, hospitals, highways, prisons to the detriment of society. From experience from 2008, from the mortgage security scandals, I don't ever want to see banking innovation again.
Thank you, Sherwin. Now let's measure everyone's agreement with this idea in Egora. We will reassess this measure after the commentary. Who agrees with or supports this idea? May we see a show of hands? Please keep your hand raised for counting.
Okay, we have Staci, Sherwin, Joe, Daniel, and that's it.
Kevin.
4 of us. All right. Kevin too? Okay, 5.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Okay. Now, Staci will present each of principles 1 through 10 with her commentary on how the idea stacks up against each of them. Remember, please, write your comments in the chat so that the author can review them later, and raise your hand in the chat to comment orally after the principle is presented.
All right, I have posted in the chat that this is principle 1, and please go ahead and write your comments in the chat. It will be very helpful for the idea author to use in the future. They will receive a copy of your comments in the chat, and they'll use it to improve their idea. Holistic principle 1 is diminish no one or nothing, do no harm. Will nationalization do harm to those industries and its customers which are affected? I believe that there should be an analysis prepared of the spectrum of such possible diminishment and make it available in legislation for full transparency and informed decision-making. As the idea is fleshed out, more areas for analysis of diminishment will likely arise. Diminishment is expected with any movement or change. The goal is to assess the change versus the potential benefit. So we're not expecting this idea to not change anybody in a reducing way. What we want to know is, what are all of the ways that people will be reduced, or will the recombination of what we're talking about here cause enough good to offset the vacuum that is created by the change? And that is the holistic principle 1, diminish no one or nothing, do no harm, and my commentary. And then I believe we open it up. Is that right, Joe? Or we have.
Let me respond.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. We take brief, like 1 minute of comments, text, and one person does an oral comment, and then we continue to the next point. So I think what we're doing now is, Staci, you've finished giving your comment, right?
Yes, and now we have rebuttal from Sherwin.
Okay, rebuttal from Sherwin, and then we give our rebuttals. We type them in and right. Okay, go ahead, Sherwin.
Yes.
Okay, on the issue of harm, it's clear that the system somehow and the people in the company caused the initial harm to the company, whatever big company that is failing, and require the bailout. Bailout itself harms the balance of competition and the industry, and not bailing them out harms supply chain. So this is a thing that competition may benefit customers, but not in some cases for huge oligopolistic industries such as banking and insurance. So my main point is, we can nationalize entire oligopolistic industries like insurance, That is, of course, subject to debate, but I mean, how many insurance companies should there really be? How much choice do you want when all of the insurance companies behave exactly the same other than different advertising? So I
Okay.
yield the floor.
Okay, so now we're going to have rebuttal from the audience. I will pick one person with their hand up to give an oral rebuttal, and the rest of you can put your comments in the chat. Does anyone have their hand up for the oral rebuttal?
No, but Ramses has a bunch of comments. I say let's go with Ramses's comments.
Yes, Ramses. Why don't you state your comment real quick, and then we'll have Sherwin give a rebuttal, his response to that.
Yes, so I should go ahead and say a
Yeah.
brief about. Yeah. So if all companies behave the same, then welcome to communism. Okay, the reason why we have capitalism is to have competition, and then you have multiple options, and you choose the insurance company that works best for you. And if the insurance company is bad, then other competitors will definitely do better.
Okay, so Ramses,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Sherwin, you have take 2 minutes to give a response to
Yeah,
that.
I like to respond. Capitalism exists so that failing companies should die. If capitalism works properly, there's no such thing as too big to fail. So I think that's the key part. Now, with respect to nationalism, nationalization, maybe there are other forms, but definitely after bailout, it should not be business as usual, and executive pay resumes at prior rates, where some people are still getting rich off of public funded bailouts. So my answer is really, if you really think, and I don't like the fact that we need to label nationalism as communism, because there's many nationalized industries, highways, for example. That's not communism. Somebody has to build the highways. So it's not necessarily communism.
Okay. All right, Staci, will you now go with your second point on your list?
Holistic principle 2 is obey the law. So we're going to explore whether this idea obeys the law in its present form. I would say that nationalization will require a shift of the management, governance, and other oversight, which includes a whole lot of legal and regulational rigmarole. So all laws must be researched for compliance. And nationalization itself is lawful under the prescribed pathways. Rebuttal, Sherwin?
Yeah, absolutely. I think nationalizing failed companies gives the opportunity to transfer ownership from the stakeholders, from the shareholders, and whoever are responsible for the failure, to other stakeholders. So fire the leaders, right? But the industry doesn't necessarily need to be changed too much, right? Of course, once again, I'm not proposing nationalize everything, but insurance, for example, is just gambling. Life insurance is somebody gambling that somebody will die for a payout. How many different ways can we do that? I just don't. Why is lottery? What is lottery innovation, for example, right? How much different ways do we really want to be gambling? Shouldn't we all be doing something that's more productive and value added?
And we have some comments from Ramses. Would you like to comment out loud, Ramses?
Yeah, sure, I can go out loud. So I'm saying that nationalization is always a crime. Okay, free market is a human freedom, and we should respect that. So we shouldn't do nationalization at all. And actually, for nationalized services like road planning and police service, for example, I already presented an idea before, which is kind of anarcho capitalist, where everything is free market, including police itself. But anyways, please don't nationalize anything. I want to do my business.
Okay, I'd like to respond. The economy currently is run as with using late stage capitalism, and the result, you get these stimulus, bailouts, failed economy, printed money, asset inflation and stability, zero negative interest rates. There's a lot of things going on that the free market is not solving, and it's proven. Wealth inequality, labor insecurity, and the list just keeps going on. You know, why are we privatizing schools? Free market can solve that. Why are we privatizing prisons so that judges can put more people in jail? You know, privatizing highways so that some foreigners can own our highways and make money off of tolls. Private markets can't solve everything. I yield the floor.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next principle. Once again, Staci, give your comment, Sherwin, give your rebuttal, and then Daniel will have his hand up. Just remember, it's got to be pertinent to principle number 3 now.
Holistic principle 3 is be honest and clarify language through definitions. And I would recommend that in preparing the founding documents, governance, and management, etc., follow this principle. And where readers are confused, clarify the proper documents, and glossaries are key. Any rebuttal, Sherwin?
I agree.
Okay. Do you have any comments, Daniel, on this particular point?
Yeah, thanks. You know, people complain about lawyer speak or legalese, you know, because when lawyers write something, they have to take what seems to be paragraphs and paragraphs to say what people usually would say in just a few words between them. But, you know, when you think about it, scientists tend to do the same thing when they are describing an experiment or the hypothesis or the outcome, or, you know, the evidence. I mean, it's there's no getting around it. You know, it's a technical, wordy process to apprehend truth more closely in a way that is more nuanced, contextualized, academic, scientific, all that stuff. So you know, I think you can use short words for the spirit of a thing, you know, like do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, the golden rule is a very nice, succinct thing. But when it comes to clarifying that, like, you know, when someone says they're against the free market, I say, well, so you don't like farmers markets? You would like to go down to the farmers market and, you know, grab what you need from someone who grew it? I'll yield.
All right, Daniel, thank you for your comment. Remember, we're using the principles to reflect upon Sherwin's essay. So I take it you don't think there's anything unclear about his writing. Let's move on to the next point, please, Staci. Point number 4.
Holistic principle 4, be transparent. Transparency means the ability for all to see. Follow this in creating key documents and policies, etc. Observation, to nationalize under our current government would not fulfill this principle because it is clear our current government is not transparent and it doesn't have a good relationship with many of these holistic principles. Sherwin, rebuttal.
I believe that the government needs to be open and transparent during the bailout. And once again, the organization doesn't necessarily need to be owned by the government after the bailout. Perhaps nationalization is an interim, perhaps worker-owned and stakeholder-owned organization is the end result. I do believe that there is lack of transparency inside the government and open government. Other solutions are another discussion. I yield.
Okay, so who has their hand up for making any comments on transparency? I noticed you made a comment, Ramses. You have a minute. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, definitely nationalization means lack of transparency. Anything that goes to government is now a secret. And the government can hide information under the arguments that this is for national security. And also a bailout is not an argument for this point and for all other holistic points. Bailout has nothing to do with the efficacy of capitalism. It is a socialist thing. It's against capitalism. It is not for capitalism.
Again, I don't think labels help, but basically, free enterprise does not mean freedom. All corporations, by definition, are dictatorships from the CEO downwards. They can fire you at any time, and there is no transparency. Government has to have transparency. I really think we have this backwards here. I yield.
Okay, so now we're on point number 5.
Oh, Daniel has a point.
Holistic principle.
But we're doing one oral
Oh, one oral. Okay.
argument per point. So you have to get in there right away if you want to give your argument for that point. Okay. So look ahead to the other points, Daniel. I have them up here on my screen, and see if there's anyone that you want to make a point with. Okay. You can try to reserve that in advance, maybe. All right. So point number 5.
Holistic principle number 5 is simplify. Again, nationalization may not simplify, but simplicity may be able to be built in. There is not enough to measure compliance at this stage.
Okay, I agree.
Okay, who else to give their comment on simplicity? Daniel, you have your hand up.
Yeah, the simplest principle is that which is voluntary is good and that which is coercive is bad. And, getting to that other point, a corporation, you're free to leave. The corporation doesn't come in and enslave you, even though sometimes they do if they've monopolized all the resources. But yeah, open source and voluntarism are the simplest and best ways to go.
Okay, won't you give your response to that, Sherwin?
Not sure how that applies, but I to nationalizing or bailouts.
Well, when you said a corporation's a dictatorship, they don't kidnap you and force you to work for them. So that would not be an accurate parallel to describe a corporation as a dictatorship, because you're free to not work for them.
Okay, got it.
You guys,
I believe that. Sorry, Joe.
Can I just say something, you guys? In the interest of time, what I want to do is I want to stick to the format so that we can see if we can actually fit it within an hour. We might find that there is room to actually branch out and go into more rebuttals and things like that. But we have to.
It's a pretty quick comment, but yeah.
Okay, well, we'll think about that eventually. Right now, we're just making it go. We'll go ahead and get it finished, Sherwin. Okay.
Sorry, what did you say?
Yeah, go ahead. You're giving a comment. I had to interrupt because there was a lot of interplay with the content, with the format there.
Okay. Yeah. I think once again, if we're applying it to the concept of bailouts and nationalist ownership, we're definitely not forcing a company to continue operations, right? But I think the fear comes from the government that the company is too big to fail, and therefore, instead of taking over certain contracts and renegotiating, this is what happened in 2008, renegotiating the entire supply chain of failed mortgages. They just chose to let the company do it, and not blow up the system. I guess that was the fear. And to me, like there's deeper issues here in that we shouldn't be measuring economy by by this fear of having any failure in any part of the system. Even having capitalism should have and has had many economic crashes before, and this is so far from capitalism. Go ahead. Next.
Okay, I was just giving you the countdown. We're getting to our 2 minutes.
I got it.
Okay, so for the next one, we have point number 6. Staci.
Holistic principle number 6, prioritize viability of the whole. It seems clear the intent of this idea is to prioritize viability of the whole by supporting fairness and the individual. This principle could be well used to ensure the beneficiality of this idea if the idea is brought to reality.
Okay.
Sherwin, did you have any comments?
Yeah. There's again, like certain activities such as gambling, nationalizing lottery makes sense, right? How many different forms of innovation do we really want to have in lotteries? I realize that there may be side effects of those kind of innovation, but there's side effects to space exploration as well. There should be nonprofits for credit rating and consumer or financial audits. I mean, credit rating, really, if we want regulatory capture to be dominant, this is where industries become self-regulated, right? And they're not going to regulate themselves fairly or honestly. What happens is with credit rating agencies is that banks get to come up with really dumb products that they get credit rating agencies to rate them higher, and that is the free market. They get to pay and they get to corrupt the system. I yield.
Daniel, do you want to make a comment, or should we move to 7? I will move to holistic principle 7.
Oh, mine was muted.
Oh, go
Sorry.
ahead. All right.
Gambling, ultimately, it turns out to be a tax on people who have poor math skills. Because if you had good math skills, you'd realize the odds and you probably wouldn't gamble.
Yeah, I agree.
Very good. Holistic principle 7, benefit the most in number over the few. This is pretty similar to 6, but again, it seems clear the intent of this idea is to benefit the most in number over the few. Sherwin?
Yeah, definitely. When we're talking about benefits, we're talking about the best structure for each service being delivered, right? If we want free markets delivering education, that just means that the rich get better education. If we're benefiting the most, we should have government provided education, right? So I yield.
Okay, I see hands going up. Kevin, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. Who else had their hand up? Anyone? Okay, Daniel, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just kind of a quick comment. I think benefiting the most, it seems like something that a committee could do, but actually the voluntary interaction and the spontaneous order of free enterprise actually turns out to benefit the most of the time. Not 100%, but most of the time, if it's done right.
Okay, holistic principle number 8, include all. This idea seems more inclusive than current or past incidents or norms that were cited in the idea. Sherwin, do you have comments?
I agree.
And should I just move on to principle number 9?
Yeah.
This
Yes,
is a
go
good
ahead.
one. Okay, create choice over exclusive rules. This idea appears to be violative of this principle unless there is some way to allow for competition under the nationalization plan. Sherwin?
I think there's several different layers, right? Competition is not stifled with nationalized companies. Those companies, if they needed bailout, become nationalized, but just for temporarily, and then become worker owned. Perhaps they would even compete better if they're worker owned somehow. I don't think there is a reduction of choice there. Now, in oligopolies, that doesn't make any difference. For example, if you only had 5 major insurance companies or 5 major banks, taking one away or even nationalizing one doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make consumers any better off having more choices. So I yield.
Okay, I don't see any hands up, but I do see that Ramses, you gave some, yeah, you have to type it in or something down there. Do you have the ability to type in hand up when you do this? Okay.
Sorry, Shao, can you say that again?
Yeah, okay. So I didn't see any hands up yet. I was going to go with you, Ramses, because you had some stuff written on the chat, but then I saw Daniel's hand go up. You've spoken a few times, Daniel. I want to give either Kevin or Ramses a chance to speak. Are you good, Ramses? You want to say something?
I can go, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
In terms of choice, as there's no argument, I think, yeah, of course, any kind of nationalization prevents the ability to choose. And also the bailout argument doesn't work here again, because we are asking the government to stop these socialist measures. Please do not do bailouts. And that way people will be wiser when they do business, and they will work harder because they know that they are not compensated when they fail. But if you know that when you fail, the government will simply help you, then this makes people more lazy, you know? Your failure is your responsibility. And finally, here, there should be a choice. People should be able to do their businesses, you know, whether it's gonna succeed, whether it's gonna fail. It's a game and you are playing it. So you either play well or no, it's not, it's your choice.
Thank you, Ramses. This is a timely discussion with COVID and the pending insolvency crisis that's about to affect all of us in many industries, such as restaurant, travel, airlines. Shall we just bail out the large ones, leave the locals to die? I mean, or should we just press reset, which may be dangerous as well? I actually don't like bailouts. Obviously, if we were to let capitalism work itself out, maybe I should actually rewrite this idea, Ramses, and say, you know, I disagree with bailouts, but if there's going to be bailouts, you can't have business as usual. I yield.
Okay, so Staci, idea number 10, please, principal.
Okay, number 10 is create and maintain ecological health. It appears the idea could be created to be in compliance with this principle. There are no red flags at this stage if lawful business practices and green ideas are implemented to offset power consumption and waste created. Sherwin?
I agree.
Okay, now a hand up this time. Anyone have a hand up? Okay, Daniel, relate this to ecological concerns, please.
Well, I think when capitalism is practiced correctly, you get things like decentralization, and decentralization is inherently less destructive and more ecological than centralized enterprises, and it leads to worker ownership, which was a point I did get a chance to say before. I don't know if I can say it now or not.
Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, well, I think the reason that people don't know about credit unions is the banks have so much better publicity agents and bigger ad budgets. But a credit union is like a bank that's a co-op. It's working to maximize the dividends for its stakeholders. And I think that's the integration of so-called capitalism and so-called socialism, or some people call it stakeholder capitalism. And I think that's the frontier that we're moving toward.
Yeah, I love that idea. Basically, after bailouts, or we can cooperatize companies, including these kinds of forms as credit unions. I'm not sure what, again, I'm not sure what kind of damage we're about to see as pending from the COVID-19 crisis. But a lot of companies will need to be saved. And this is a perfect time to rethink the corporation as it is. Now, certain large companies, and we're strictly talking about companies that are big enough that they consider too big to fail. And those kinds of companies are typically not in a decentralizable industry, right? You're not going to get a million little restaurants that people think are too big to fail, right? So typically these are oligopolistic industries that basically doesn't give consumers pricing power anyways, right? So it is exactly, it is a difference of scale there. Yeah, so I do like that idea, cooperating companies, much better than nationalizing, but because you know, the government, the big government is nowhere for companies to reside in the long term. I yield. You're on mute.
Oh, here I am. All right, everyone. We've been through now all the 10 principles, and I noticed you put your hand up there, Staci. Is the floor open for debate now? Are we all ready for that? Okay, great. I always have initial comments. I always have some initial comments, but let's see if anyone else would like to go first. All right, Staci, take it.
Yeah, I really like the idea of the credit union. I think that takes care of all the principal issues. And I think, could you explain, either Daniel or Sherwin, could you please explain what is the difference between a credit union and a bank, please?
Yeah, I think I can shed some light there. Basically, when you give a bank your money, it stops being your money. But when you give a credit union your money, you're in a co-op with a bunch of other people that are trying to maximize their results and their worker ownership. So you don't hear about credit unions, going bust and taking down, everyone's assets with them. At least I don't think so. But yeah, a bank is a fundamentally kind of different animal. It's a profit-making corporation that's out to maximize returns to a small group of shareholders. But in the credit union, it's a co-op and everyone is a shareholder. So really any enterprise can be reconstituted as a shareholder co-op.
So does this take care of the kind of corruption things that we're seeing in the banking industry? Credit unions really have stuff that prevents that from happening?
I think you could make a case that they're way more transparent and way less subject to corruption and abuse practices. I'd have to research that.
That is super big news to me. I think that if we educated people that is how we can take care of big banking industry, I think that would be important. I think people would really like to hear that. Yeah,
that message just isn't getting out. That's the big problem. I think a lot of people would switch to credit unions tomorrow if they had the value proposition laid out for them.
And I love the hashtag that Sherwin has chosen, which is too precious to fail. And it's not about the banks, it's about the people. And if we use that hashtag, I think that really, it touches my heart, because when do we ever hear that people are precious and that we're making policies to help them? So I love that. And thank you, Sherwin, for that. And I yield the floor.
Let me respond a little bit. I thank you, Staci, that for your support. I think I actually don't really come from it from an empathetic perspective. I'm just trying to solve problems as an engineer. I was like, there's something wrong. We all got to figure it out. Obviously, the engineer does build bridges that keeps people alive, but we're not really thinking about that is the fundamental principle. But there's so many issues and so many pieces involved that we're trying to figure out. But the fundamental principle obviously is the people. And in this case, society and the economy being run by capitalism, purely capitalism, and free markets to solve everything is just simply not thinking about the people. Right. It's just you can't focus on two things at once often. If you think about profits, you can't be thinking about the people. I yield.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's any one system of governance or economics that does everything. I think we need sometimes a mixture of capitalist, socialist, and environmental uh, policies. That don't necessarily contradict each other, but fill in for the gaps. I mean, this country needed a socialist policy when the COVID came out. We didn't have one. We were flat on our feet. You know, but when this is over, we need to go back to doing business. Absolutely. Um, we're getting pretty close. It's 7:13. I think we started at 6:21. So there's another 8 minutes of
Ramses
discussion.
has her hand up.
Yeah,
Ramses?
did we hear from Ramses?
Okay. And Kevin had his hand up too. So why don't you go ahead, Ramses?
Sure, but we started at 31, not 21. Is that
Am I
correct?
wrong about that? I beg your pardon. Okay. If you guys are until 6:31, 7:31, that's great. Okay, go ahead.
Perfect. So of course, there might be no one system to solve everything. However, I think we shouldn't say, I think capitalism will work or will not work. I think actually this needs more analysis, more scientific analysis, more experimentation. And anarcho-capitalism, where everything is free market, has never been tried, has never been experimented, and has never been implemented. So we cannot make any assumptions about it. It might succeed, it might fail, I don't know. And that's why I'm not calling for one specific system here. Actually, for instance, I support both capitalism and at the same time, I support insurance for healthcare and education being nationalized, because education is the most important thing in a society to build a successful society. But anyways, what I want to say here is we know pretty well that socialism failed and failed in many places and in many areas. So that's why if solving problems by returning back to socialism or by nationalizing them definitely is not the right way to fix problems.
I saw you with your hand up for a second there, Kevin, and then we'll go with Daniel. Is that your hand up, Kevin? I beg your pardon, because I see a finger. Was that mistaken?
No, yeah, you're mistaken. I'm fine.
Okay,
I'm just sitting here casually.
that's fine. Why don't you go ahead, Daniel? Now that you had your hand up, we'd like to hear you say your words.
Yeah, I just say, given our past history, we really are not used to implementing ideas that are less centralized, less hierarchical, and more open source and more voluntary. And really, supply creates demand. People don't know what to ask for unless they've been exposed to it. So really, it's going to take an education and an evolutionary process to bring a lot of these changes about. But I think they're coming. I think, the moral arc of the universe bends toward justice and all that. So, yield the floor.
All right. So, Ramses,
Can I respond, Joe?
why don't you go ahead and answer the question I posed to you on the chat? I asked Ramses how the social programs for COVID are working in Canada right now.
Yeah, I can answer that, but I guess Sherwin already wants to reply to all what we have said.
I'm sorry.
May I come after Sherwin?
I'll just respond to the prior comments. Basically, I hear you both, Ramses and Daniel, your comments, and I believe that this idea can be rewritten to basically fit your concerns. I believe that nationalization is probably not necessarily as a broad stroke solution, and also distributed solution is best. Now, the social approach in Canada, I think maybe less so that I don't think Canada had a socialistic economic system. So we suffer exactly the same kind of economic fallout as Americans during COVID. Except for our system of government does not require 3 different levels to approve a stimulus. So that's where it went much faster, right? So maybe that's that's a function of the government structure, not really of the socialistic approach. Did you have something else to add, Ramses? Because you have the Canadian experience as well.
Yeah, I thank you, Sherwin. So I would say it is not just socialistic approach, it's actually communist approach. So I'm sorry, but when you impose curfew on people, claiming that it is better for our health, then you are going just like communist China, and Soviet Union. And now we are another communist country in the world, finally, in Canada. So definitely these communist measures really destroy the economy. It's a government which destroyed the economy in the first place, okay? When the virus started, why didn't you fucking close the airports? Why didn't you fucking close the border, okay? And the answer was by Trudeau. He said in March, that's xenophobic. I cannot prevent the Chinese from getting into the country. So it's not about the Chinese here. It's about all kind of traffic between Canada and the outside of the world. It should be more controlled now, and you can learn from Taiwan. So in my opinion, it's a government that destroyed the economy, and now they are paying tribute, it's like, okay, we did the big mistake and we have to pay something for the people to continue doing their business. And of course, they selective.
All right. Well, okay, you guys. So
I think Daniel was talking, but was on mute.
Oh, you're on mute. Unmute yourself, Daniel.
Oh yeah. If you lose your life, all your other rights are lost. And I think China actually did minimize the loss of life with the very drastic measures. So you have to take a little bit of credit, to the technocratic centralized emergency measures there. Because yeah, when your life is lost, there goes all your other rights.
Okay.
But at the same time, the lies and the cover-ups were what initially caused the breakouts.
Yeah, that's true too. Good point.
Did you see the WHO just said that China is not responsible for the breakout?
Is that right?
That's a matter of opinion, I think.
Well, some government people definitely were like vilifying the original doctors and scientists who were trying to warn the rest of the world. It was even viral. And then, did you know it was viral on WeChat, and the government specifically, because they had the technology, weeded out these words that say, hey, there's an outbreak, What good is government trying to look good when they can't do good, right?
Well, it seems to me that the WHO must be in somebody else's hands. I don't know how they could come up with that. Just my opinion. I don't know how they could come up with that ruling, but.
Well, look, I'm sorry.
Maybe funding. Higher funding from China. How's that for an explanation?
Yeah, I think there is such a thing as government overreach, but there can be government underreach too. And I think the government's got to figure out what its place is, and really be at the service of the people.
Amen.
Yeah.
Look, guys. So whatever, I'm not gonna accuse the Chinese government here, but however, as long as this WHO thing is managed by this Ethiopian guy who has an agenda with China, and it's pretty clear how he was elected, and it's pretty clear how he became the president of WHO. So as long as this is the case, I'm not gonna believe WHO, and I'm not gonna take any of their publishers, whatever they publishing.
All right, I guess we're really close to the 1 hour mark here. Maybe, are we ready to go into closing remarks?
Yeah, let's do it. We have exactly 9 minutes. So now that it's close to the 1 hour mark, let's move into closing remarks. Staci, do you have some closing remarks for us?
I do. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoy the way things were kept moving. Thank you, Joe, for doing that. I know it's very difficult and it's tough to cut people off. So thanks a lot. That was a tough job. And I thank Sherwin so much for continuing to bring up these kind of complex economic, governmental supply chain issues. They're not your average ideas. I really enjoy going through them. And I love this idea when we talk about using the education for the credit unions. I love this. I want to make a hashtag campaign out of it on my website. So thank you all very much. And thank you, Ramses, so much for joining us and making this wonderful. This was a wonderful talk. Thank you.
How about you, Ramses? Do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, that was super organized. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Staci, and thank you, Sherwin, for organizing all of that. And thank you, Daniel and Kevin, for participating in this and making it so organized like this. I also would appreciate how Sherwin was very objective. The discussion itself was so objective. All parties were just discussing the idea in a very civilized way. So thank you, everyone, for being awesome.
All right. Daniel, won't you give a closing remark?
Yeah, I heard a quote from a great thinker, Daniel Schmachtenberger, and he says, you know, a dead whale on a whaling boat is worth $1 million, but a living whale in the ocean is worth no dollars. So that just shows you how wrong our economy is right now. And we could do things like using the hashtag principle, tag your ideas with hashtags, and we can really recreate governance from the civilian level up. So thanks for being a part of that.
Okay.
Amen.
Kevin, how about some remarks from you?
Yeah, this is a great call tonight. Congratulations. It was a great topic. The flow was great. The call was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I think it's getting, I think they're getting fun. So I'm looking forward to the next one. Where would I go from here? What can I add?
Oh, well, do you want to drop a constitution of your own?
That's it. No.
Okay.
It was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
I yield.
Sherwin, go ahead. Give your closing remarks.
I think I'm glad that the process works. Process works in that I was able to get the feedback and from like-minded people who can help me improve this idea, clarify it, make it better, and that's all I could really ask for. I'm really thankful you guys were able to help me with this, and yeah, thanks all.
I just want to say for myself, I am so happy that on our third attempt, I have what we feel like was a very successful meeting. Now, I definitely would like to meet with any of you who are into this and would like to talk about doing it more, even finding ways of improving it, getting it to where even someone like me could do it without any hitches. Because I don't call myself a very talented host, but when I get enthusiastic about something, I'll just jump in. So we can talk about that at some point in time. I think we have our UCP meetings still possibly going on, and maybe we could do some more work on this, but I'd say we got something to go with, and I'm looking forward to anyone who wants to join us for the next one. Well, all right, you guys. Let's see here. Thank you so much. Now let's measure everyone's agreement with this idea in Egora. Who agrees with or supports this idea? May we see a show of hands? Please keep your hands raised for counting.
Okay, we have Staci, Sherwin, Kevin, Daniel, and Joe. So we still
I'm sure I
haven't
could get
flipped
Ramses if I reloaded.
Yeah?
Maybe so.
Okay.
All right. We have a lot
the only
of
bourgeoisie
agreement
here.
with this idea. I'm sorry?
Okay.
No, just kidding. Never mind.
Okay.
I mean, I like the idea with the provisions that we added to it. Is that what I was voting on?
Yeah. Okay, so we have done our count. let's see here. Okay, and for our viewers, if you liked this idea, don't forget to support them in the egorailp.org. Also in Egora, you will find information for our upcoming meetings. And finally, like our page and join our group Citizen Assembly on Facebook. Staci is available to comment about the 34 holistic principles or even help you develop a set of your own that we could actually use here in this forum. All right, so you can become the person to do the interrogating on the next one if you come up with some principles. So contact us for more information, and I guess that means you can whoever you want. But I think Staci's a good go-to person for all this constitutional stuff. It's pretty neat. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I want to say that it looks like we will be doing this more regularly, and the tentative time is Tuesdays at starting around 8:15 Central Time after the Citizen Assembly Thunderdome podcast recording. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So now do I push the record button off, or do you do that, Staci?